Well, welcome to the One Life Church devotional series where we cover the entire Bible in 20 months. Well, today's chapters are Nehemiah chapter 12 and John chapter 5. Now, in Nehemiah 12, we see the wall is complete. Now, I'm standing next to a very impressive wall here. In fact, one that you can drive cars on and people run and walk on it in the mornings. Now, Nehemiah gets all the priests, gets all the Levites, finds a record of them, assembles all the people together, and he puts them in two companies. Musicians walking to the east and musicians walking to the west. He joins them and they start to sing and they worship on top of the wall. Now, what is he doing here? Well, he is making certain that they don't worship the very gift that God has given them. And how often isn't that the case? You pray for a child, he gives you a child. You pray for a job, he gives you a job. You pray, he gives you good gifts, he gives you talents, he gives you friends, and then they become the treasure of your heart. Nehemiah was making sure that that mistake wouldn't happen, that they wouldn't worship the work of their hands, they wouldn't worship the gift that God had given them. They get onto the roof and onto the walls, and they walk the walls and they celebrate God's goodness. Now in John chapter 5, Jesus is at a well called Bethesda. And he performs a miracle there. And in performing that miracle, he does three things. He presents himself as the author of life. He exposes the hypocrisy of the Pharisees. And he brings healing to this particular guy. So this is how it happens. He's at this place called Bethesda. It's got 5 columns around it, covered. Interestingly, it has been excavated since, exactly where the Bible says it was. And he sees a whole bunch of people lying around the pool. This was the tradition. Climb into it and you'd get healed. So his eye gets drawn to a particular guy who's not climbing in the pool. And so he says to him, do you want to be healed? And the guy says, yeah, but they don't let me in the pool here. So he says, pick up your mat and walk. Knowing full well it was a Saturday, and that was going to expose the Pharisees. The Pharisees didn't even see the miracle. They were so obscured by their laws and rules. And they had made a rule, you can't carry your mat on a Saturday. Now, Jesus always made it very clear, it was lawful to do good on the Sabbath. Anyway, they find out it was Jesus and they get furious. They in fact have intention to kill him. And so Jesus does two things at this point. He explains to the people listening to him that he is the author of life. He says, look, the Father has life, he's given me life. You've seen me bring life into these dead legs. You're going to see life. You actually see people raised from the dead. In fact, he goes on to say that at one point in the future, my voice, every single human, every person that's ever lived is going to come to life, and that's talking about the resurrection. And so once he's made that clear, then he turns to the Pharisees and he says, listen, you think you have life because you study the scriptures. Life has got to do more than academics, more than theory, more than theology. No. The scriptures point to me, he says, and yet you don't come to me. He says that's where life comes from, when you come to me. And he goes on to say to them, he says, listen, Moses, the very person you study, the very one that you have your theology degree in, Moses is going to testify against you, because Moses wrote about me many times. Deuteronomy 18:15, Moses says there's a prophet coming, talking of Jesus. Moses put a stick up with a snake on it, and Jesus pointed to that in John chapter 3, didn't he? And he said what Moses was doing, he was saying it was me who was going to be raised up in front of you. Now Moses testified about Jesus the whole way through his writings. And so this chapter ends with a rebuke of the Pharisees and a call that Jesus makes to people to come to him to receive life from him. Now, when our faith is reduced to a bunch of rules, when to pick up your mat and walk, when our faith is reduced to theology, to just simple study, something's gone wrong, because the scriptures point to the author of life. He's the one we should go to. In fact, right now, I'm off to go pray, because I've read these 2 chapters today, but I know they point to Jesus. He's the one that I should be talking to right now. God bless you.